All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for being here and for listening to our talk. So, as was just announced, my name is Leisha Evans. I'm a licensed wildlife permitter for wildlife rehabilitation. I'm also a licensed veterinary technician and the manager of the Whatcom Humane Society Wildlife Center. We do get in quite a few swans, so that's why I'm here to talk to you guys today. It's about the rehabilitation effort and collaboration with the Department of Fish and Wildlife to help these birds.
I'm a biologist with Washington State Fish and Wildlife. I'm kind of in a weird situation where I'm a split position, do a lot of weed management, habitat restoration, and then move into swans for part of the year. And I capture the swans that are lead poisoned to get to Alicia. So kind of what we do, I'll kind of do a quick rundown of kind of a little historical. Um, there was a bunch of swans that was dying up at Judson, which Martha kind of hit on. And in the early 2000s, there was a research group that got put together, and they were trying to find out how, where these swans were picking up the lead shot. One of the first spots that they did find, partially due to all the mortalities, was Judson Lake, which is a transboundary lake, so between U.S. and Canada, which makes it kind of interesting to do anything rehab-wise on that. And then they ended up going through doing a bunch of monitoring, hazing. It got to the point where we put bamboo poles in the lake where it was the heaviest on like a 5 meter by 5 meter grid, which did help. Swans take a lot to take off, and so they would not land in those areas. But there was still some. They'd land on the outer edge, swim in, swim out, but the numbers were greatly reduced. The department, pretty much in the beginning from say 2006, 2014, our sole job was to pick up the diseased birds, pretty much to prevent secondary lead poisoning. Then again, that was seasonal, part-time staff. So some people would quit halfway through the season. I ended up starting in 2016, ended up making it a full-time position. Part of it with this nice little airboat here, being a licensed operator, was able to get in and do a lot of areas that the other people weren't. Okay, so here's kind of the tools. One of these is going to be that's Judson Lake there off the airboat, and part of this things, the other boats were much smaller. They could get 1-2 birds, they'd have to go back in, and then some of the birds would fly. They'd move around other parts of the lake into the Canada side. Border Patrol doesn't really like that. And then this is another boat that we ended up getting, and this is on a gravel pit, which again, takes a lot of connections to get just the people that work there to call you, since kind of private land and they're already under enough regulations, they don't want any more. And in 2016, there was a lot more emphasis on live capture instead of just picking up the carcasses. Part of this was due to the rehab center and sometimes field staff being able to implement euthanasia, as well as there was a blood analyzer, so we could get through and kind of determine whether some of these birds were rehab candidates or not. So here's kind of a map, Washington State for this is international. And then pretty much our main focus is right here. And it's kind of where most of that happens. Most of it's just me. There is a lot of partner situations going on. Puget Sound Energy, Snohomish PUD, Alicia, and I get a call pretty much once swan season happens, 8:30 every morning. One of the guys calls me, where are the birds at? Where are we going? Where are you working? And so it kind of turns into somewhat of a unique situation. And as we kind of talked about earlier, the annual midwinter swan counts, these are all done off-road, volunteers, some of the partners, and then a few agency staff. So we are seeing pretty good increase of population. And again, that's getting upward 20,000 just in this little tiny section. And pretty much right here in Skagit, half that is mountainous. The other half is kind of farming valley. 13,000 of the 19 last year was found in that one little section. Here's some of the log mortalities. And we can kind of see it was pretty even. And this is when a lot of the hazing and stuff was going on in Judson. And then we kind of get a pickup every so often. But even since some of the years, especially here, the lake was frozen over. So this just kind of goes through and shows that some of these spots that are known, there's a lot more going on in those areas. And then we had one lovely year last year. We had massive floods. Everything was feet underwater. And so that helped out where they couldn't get wherever this lead is. And a lot of it is this legacy lead hunting. It wasn't banned until 1990 in Washington and for hunting purposes only. And again, we know that some of this is the lead high mortality rate. So using this blood analyzer, finding out which ones are in a moderate concentration that we can actually give Alicia a chance to rehab them. And another one this year, we've already had one swan that had HPA, which that's this year. Anticipate that's going to highly affect our team's efficiency between cleaning. I was talking about being able to pick multiple birds up at once. Now it's going to be one site, have to clean our equipment, get the bird to Alicia, and then kind of rinse and repeat. You can't just go site to site like we used to be able to do. DFW also has a hotline for the public to call, which that helps me out significantly. It sends me a voicemail right to my phone. They tell you, hey, there's a power line strike. It helps you set up your day. And again, having these other people and partners, I have somewhere else I need to go because I have the boat. I'm like, hey, can you pick up this power line strike?
All right. So basically, Daniel just went through what happens in the field, so how they're collected. And then basically at this point, they come to the rehabilitation center. So there was the big emphasis in 2016 of kind of reframing how we were doing things and how the swans were getting to us. And they were coming to us in a much better state, which did ultimately affect our rehabilitation. So when they come through the door, what we're doing is we're looking at them and doing full exams and medical treatments. So our staff are permitted, which is something that's really important in order to know what we can and can't do and what's best for the animals. And then we do have equipment that's specific to swans. So we do actually have a whole swan building, especially with HPAI or high path avian influenza. That's going to be key for this year. So we have separate intake, triage, care facilities, all that good stuff. And so when we're looking specifically at lead, what we're looking for is a series of markers of, is this bird going to be a rehabilitation candidate? It would be different too if we were getting one in at a time, but sometimes we're getting up to 70 at a time. And so we need to be able to take a look at that and see who's going to actually make it through this process. So we look at things like weight, their feces, their neurologic status, their location of origin. Are they coming from a hot spot or is this something new? Do they have gaping mouths? All those classic lead signs to kind of tell us right off the bat, how are you guys doing? Another big one is, can they stand? So once we go through this series of checklists, we say, okay, this one's a candidate, this one's not. Then we can move on and take blood samples and use our blood lead analyzer, which has been instrumental in also creating these protocols and establishing what we can and can't do. So that blood analyzer will give us a result, and then that is how we tailor our treatments. And a lot of you in this room have dealt with lead, so you understand the complexities of this, but there's, the average swan comes in and gets about 10 medications just for lead, the chelating agents, then all the supportive IV therapies, they get IV catheters placed, radiographs, iron, all sorts of things. And then eventually, if they do have lead in their GI tract, then what we're doing is we are anesthetizing them and performing gastric lavage, which is where we actually place a tube into their GI tract, flush out all that lead, and go from there. We are starting to see in the last couple of years an uptick of sinkers. So we're getting these birds in that have lead in their GI tract or in their esophagus. And if there's a hook involved, then we have to go in and actually perform surgery. So this just takes all of our cases to the next level. And we have to make sure that if we're taking in a swan for rehabilitation, we're able to do the due justice and get it back out into the wild. In addition to all of the care is also the husbandry. So that's a big thing of what we do. We need to make sure that we're replicating what they would be eating in the wild. So all of that wild food that we can get and source out. And then a lot of these times, these lead swans specifically are so weak that they're not actually able to eat. And so then we have to provide gastric lavage tubings to be able to get a specialized slurry that's full of nutrients, fat, carbohydrates, all those good things into their system so that they can withstand the intensive lead treatments. So as you guys know from working with them, it's quite challenging. And as they get stronger and stronger, we have to make sure that our staff are equipped with the correct PPE and handling techniques because no one wants a broken bone and we don't want the swans to get injured because they love to use their carpi. So all of those things go into our daily care. A big thing of what we do as well is euthanasia. So that's a service that we provide and we view as a gift. That was part of our shift with how we worked with the department to get these animals off the landscape. We didn't want them to go through the 2-week process of slowly suffering. We want to be able to provide immediate relief and also get their carcasses out of the environment so our predators weren't getting to them. And then release. That's the best part of all of this. That's why we go through all of this, is to see what we can do in order to get these guys back out into the wild. So we work with the department closely to be able to figure out the right time of year, the right spot. Most of these lead birds are staying in care for 3 to 4 months. And so when we get those late ones in say February, then we have to go ahead and look at, okay, well, we know we're not making migration. So are we going to put resources into this animal? Are we going to ship them to Alaska or the Yukon where they are going to be during that season? Or are we going to hang on to them? So all of those decisions go into what we do. And a big effort is on banding as well and collaring that the department does. And so that way we can track them when they get reported to the bird banding lab, which is essential. So real quick, as we wrapped up here, you can see these are our numbers. So again, that shift in the department collaboration with us and other SWAN partners was in 2015, 2016. So going in 2014 to 3 admitted and 1 released, and then 2016, 110 admitted and 10 released. And these are really low numbers for release. It's a high mortality because these birds are being pulled off in mass numbers and many of them are in the process of passing, or when we get the liver results, the kidney results, the blood results, they are not going to be able to be released. It's one thing to release an animal into the wild and say, yes, we let it out the crate, it walked away. It's another thing to ensure they survive. And we know that these long-term high lead birds have cardiac issues, liver and kidney issues. So it's unfair to put them back out into the wild, knowing that they may be fine here, but they're never going to make migration again. So that's where we have to make those ethical decisions. And then kind of our key summaries are that professional care is essential. That has really shone in these last couple of years is reformatting and just refining our protocols and procedures, making sure that we're getting data collection statistics, coming up with these new protocols, and sharing knowledge and education, especially with the public, getting them to report bans, and also just having them understand how lead affects the environment and what they can do.
And again, to just kind of summarize, everything we're getting from these lead sinkers, this legacy shot, it's all human impacts, power line strikes. I mean, we try to mitigate as much as possible, but you can only do so much. And the monitoring, again, we're getting these higher populations. They're kind of hitting the threshold. They're moving into these newer areas, kind of like Martha was talking about, that we've never had issues before. So being able to monitor where they're moving and start getting other people into the loop in the department and other partners involved. And again, just getting these birds collared in the process, getting them reported to the banding lab so that we know, are these birds that we're releasing actually making it? And then, yeah, kind of our people, DFW, the Wildlife Center, Puget Sound Energy, Canadian Wildlife Service, NOSH PUD, and Northwest Swan Conservation Association.